I was 24 when I decided to try online dating. This was in 2018, and I'd just moved to Chicago for a new job. I didn't know anyone in the city, and my co-workers were all older with families. So I downloaded a few dating apps and made a profile. Nothing too revealing, just some photos, my first name, and a basic bio about liking coffee and hiking. Within a few days, I matched with a guy named Alex. His profile seemed normal. A few decent photos, said he worked in marketing, liked the same bands I did. We started messaging, and the conversation flowed easily. He was funny and asked good questions. After about a week of chatting, he suggested we meet up for coffee. I agreed, and we picked a popular cafe in Lincoln Park for Saturday afternoon. Public place, daytime, lots of people around. All the safety rules I'd read about. The morning of the date, Alex sent me a message saying he was excited to meet me and asking if I still wanted to go to that cafe or if I'd prefer the one closer to my apartment. I stopped scrolling. I'd never mentioned where I lived, not even the neighborhood. My dating profile didn't have that information, and I'd been careful not to share it in our conversations. I asked Alex what he meant. He said he'd just assumed based on my profile that I lived in Lakeview since I'd mentioned liking to run along the lake. That made sense, I guess. Lakeview was a big area, and lots of people lived there, but I felt uneasy. I told him the original cafe was fine and tried to shake off the weird feeling. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe he was just making conversation. We met at the cafe at 2 p.m. Alex looked like his photos, which was a relief. We ordered drinks and sat at a table by the window. The conversation started normally. We talked about our jobs, our favorite places in Chicago, the usual first date stuff. Then Alex mentioned he'd seen me at Whole Foods last week. I felt my stomach drop. I asked which Whole Foods. He said the one on Ashland, near my apartment. He described what I'd been wearing, a blue jacket and jeans. He was right. I had been there last Tuesday, wearing exactly that. I asked how he knew that. Alex laughed and said he'd seen me there but didn't want to say hi because we hadn't met yet, and he didn't want to seem creepy, but it was creepy, really creepy. I'd never mentioned that I shopped at that Whole Foods. I'd never posted about it, and Alex, knowing what I wore, meant he'd been watching me closely enough to remember details. I tried to stay calm and asked how he'd recognized me if we'd never met before. Alex's smile faded a little. He said he'd looked at my profile photos, obviously, but my dating profile photos were different from what I'd been wearing that day, and the Whole Foods was 15 minutes from the cafe where we'd met. How did he just happen to be at the exact store I used, at the exact time I was there? I made an excuse about not feeling well and said I needed to leave. Alex looked disappointed but said he understood. He asked if we could try again another time. I said maybe and left quickly. As I walked to my car, I kept looking over my shoulder. I had this overwhelming feeling that I was being watched. When I got home, I went through all my social media accounts. Everything was set to private, except Instagram, which I rarely used. I only had about 30 followers, mostly friends from college. I checked my recent posts. Nothing about where I lived. Nothing about Whole Foods. Nothing that would tell someone my exact location. Then I checked my tagged photos. There was one from 3 months ago that a friend had posted. We'd taken a selfie outside a restaurant in my neighborhood. The photo showed the street sign in the background. If someone zoomed in, he could read it. My exact cross streets were visible. I untagged myself immediately and deleted the Instagram app from my phone. I blocked Alex on the dating app and on my phone number. I thought that would be the end of it. But 2 days later, I got a message request on Facebook from an account with no profile picture. The message said, "Sorry if I made you uncomfortable. I really thought we had a connection. Hope you're feeling better." I'd never given Alex my last name. My dating profile only had my first name, but somehow he'd found my Facebook. I ignored the message and blocked the account. Then I went through and locked down every privacy setting I could find. I made everything friends only. I removed my hometown, my workplace, my school information. I became a ghost online. For a week, nothing happened. I started to relax. Then I found a note on my car. It was tucked under the windshield wiper, handwritten on lined paper. It said, "I saw you at the gym this morning. You looked great. We should try that date again sometime." It was signed with just the letter A. I didn't go to a public gym. I had a membership at a small 24-hour place in my building that only residents could access. Someone had been in my building. Someone had access. I took the note straight to my building manager and filed a report. She said she'd checked the security cameras, but the garage didn't have full coverage, plenty of blind spots. I stopped going to the gym in my building. I changed my routine completely. I started leaving for work at different times, taking different routes. I had my groceries delivered instead of going to the store. I was constantly looking over my shoulder, constantly aware of everyone around me. A month passed with nothing. No messages, no notes, no signs of Alex. I thought maybe he'd given up. Then my co-worker mentioned she'd seen my dating profile on a different app. I told her I'd deleted all my accounts weeks ago. She showed me her phone. There was a profile with my photos, my name, and my actual phone number listed publicly. Someone had made a fake profile of me. Using my real information, I reported it immediately and had it taken down. But the damage was done. How many people had seen it? How many had my phone number now? I changed my number that same day. I filed a police report about everything. The note, the fake profile, the messages. The officer was sympathetic, but said unless Alex made a direct threat or tried to contact me again, there wasn't much he could do. He classified it as harassment and said to document everything and call if it escalated. It's been 3 years since then. I never heard from Alex again after I changed my number. I don't know if he gave up or if he moved on to someone else. I still don't use dating apps. I'm too scared to put myself out there like that again. Because I learned that the information you share online, even the stuff you think is private, can be used to find you. And sometimes the person looking isn't someone you want to be found by. I still wonder sometimes how Alex found so much information about me. If he was just good at searching, or if he had access to something he shouldn't have, I'll never know. And that's what keeps me up at night. The not knowing. The possibility that someone out there still has my information, still knows where I live, still remembers what I look like. That fear never really goes away. You just learn to live with it. I was 28 and had been using dating apps on and off for about 2 years. I'd been on plenty of first dates that went nowhere, but I was still optimistic. This was summer of 2019, in Portland, Oregon. I matched with a woman named Jordan who seemed great on paper. Good job, interesting hobbies. Actually wrote more than 2 words in her messages. We talked for about 3 weeks before meeting up. Jordan suggested dinner at a restaurant downtown. I agreed, and we set it for a Friday night at 7. I told my roommate where I'd be and said I'd text her by 9 to let her know I was okay. Standard safety protocol. Jordan was waiting outside the restaurant when I arrived. She looked like her photos and greeted me with a hug that lasted slightly too long, but I brushed it off as nervousness. We went inside, got a table, and ordered food. The conversation was okay at first. We talked about work and weekend plans, but then Jordan started asking really personal questions. She asked where exactly I lived, not just the neighborhood, but the specific street. I gave a vague answer and changed the subject. She asked what my daily routine was like, what time I usually left for work, if I lived alone or with roommates. I said I had roommates, which was true, but I kept the details minimal. Then Jordan asked if I felt safe in my neighborhood. She said she'd heard there had been break-ins recently on the east side. My apartment was on the east side, but I hadn't mentioned that. I asked how she knew I lived there. Jordan said she'd just assumed based on something I'd mentioned earlier, but I hadn't mentioned anything about my location. The dinner felt off after that. I couldn't shake the feeling that Jordan knew more than she should. When the check came, Jordan insisted on paying. I offered to split it, but she refused. She said she wanted to walk me to my car. I said I'd taken an Uber, which was a lie. I'd driven, but I didn't want her knowing what my car looked like. Jordan offered to give me a ride home. I declined and said I'd already called an Uber. She seemed disappointed but walked with me outside anyway. We stood on the sidewalk, and I kept checking my phone, pretending to wait for my ride. Jordan kept talking, asking when we could meet again, suggesting we go to a bar nearby. I said I was tired and wanted to head home. Jordan asked for my address, so she could make sure my Uber took me to the right place. I laughed it off and said I knew where I lived. That's when Jordan's expression changed. She said she was just trying to be nice and keep me safe. She said I was being paranoid. Finally, I saw a real Uber pull up for someone else. I lied and said it was mine. Jordan tried to hug me goodbye, and I let her, quickly, then got in the Uber. I apologized to the driver and explained I needed to leave an uncomfortable situation. He understood and drove me around the block so I could get to my actual car without Jordan seeing. When I got home, I blocked Jordan's number and unmatched her on the app. I told my roommate about the weird questions and how uncomfortable I'd felt. She said I'd done the right thing, trusting my instincts. I thought that was the end of it. The next morning, I woke up to 15 missed calls from a number I didn't recognize. There were also text messages. It said, "I know you blocked me, and why are you ignoring me? And I thought we had a good time." I blocked that number too. Then, Jordan found me on Instagram. My account was private, but she sent a follow request with a message saying we should give it another chance. I denied the request and blocked her there too. Then she found me on Facebook. I blocked her again. Then, LinkedIn. I blocked her everywhere I could think of. On Sunday, 2 days after our date, I was at a coffee shop near my apartment. I was sitting by the window, working on my laptop, when I saw Jordan walk past outside. She looked directly at me through the window, stopped, and waved. Then she came inside. My heart was racing. Jordan sat down at my table without asking. She said it was such a coincidence, running into me here. She asked if I came here often. I said no, which was a lie. I was there almost every Sunday. I told Jordan I was busy and needed to work. She said she'd just sit quietly and keep me company. I packed up my laptop and said I had to go. Jordan followed me out and asked where I was going. I said I had errands to run. She offered to come with me. I said no and started walking toward my apartment, then realized that was a mistake. I didn't want her following me home, so I turned and walked in the opposite direction, toward the main street where there were more people. Jordan followed me for 3 blocks, asking questions, trying to make conversation, acting like we were friends. Finally, I stopped and told her directly that I wasn't interested and she needed to stop contacting me. Jordan looked hurt. She said I was overreacting and she just wanted to be friends. I walked into a busy store and asked an employee if I could wait inside for a few minutes. I explained someone was following me. The employee let me stay in the back room until I felt safe to leave. When I finally came out, Jordan was gone. I went straight to the police station and filed a report. I showed the officer the texts, the call logs, the follow requests on social media. He said it qualified as harassment, but since Jordan hadn't threatened me directly, there wasn't much he could do except document it. He suggested I get a restraining order if it continued. For the next week, I saw Jordan everywhere. At the grocery store, at the gym, on my street. Each time, she'd wave or try to approach me. I started documenting everything, taking photos when I saw her, noting the times and locations. My roommate saw her parked outside our building one night, just sitting in her car. That's when I got the restraining order. I had enough evidence to show a pattern of stalking. The judge granted it, and Jordan was served with papers ordering her to stay at least 500 feet away from me at all times. The police told me to call immediately if she violated it. Jordan violated it 3 days later. I saw her outside my workplace, standing across the street, watching the building. I called the police, and officers came and arrested Jordan for violating the restraining order. She spent a night in jail and was released with a court date. At the court hearing, Jordan's lawyer argued she'd just been in the area by coincidence, but my lawyer had all the documentation, all the times I'd seen her, all the different locations over multiple weeks. The judge extended the restraining order for 2 years and ordered Jordan to stay away from my neighborhood entirely. That was 2 years ago. The restraining order expired last month. I haven't seen Jordan since the court date, but I'm still terrified. What if she comes back? What if she's just been waiting for the order to expire? I moved to a different apartment 6 months after everything happened. I don't use dating apps anymore. I'm too scared to meet anyone new online. The worst part is how it started, with just one date. One person who seemed normal online, but but turned into a nightmare in real life. I think about all the information I'd shared during our 3 weeks of messaging, where I worked, what I liked to do on weekends, my favorite coffee shop, all innocent details that helped someone find me and stalk me. I'm more careful now, suspicious of everyone. I don't share details about my life online anymore. I don't check in at locations on social media. I use a PO box instead of my address for deliveries. I've built walls around myself because one person refused to accept no for an answer. And I hate that I had to change my entire life because someone else couldn't respect boundaries. But that's reality. That's what online dating taught me. Sometimes the person on the other end of the conversation isn't who she seems. And by the time you realize it, she already knows too much. I was 31 when I matched with a woman named Sam on Bumble. This was early 2021, during COVID, and I was lonely. I'd been working from home for a year and barely saw anyone outside of video calls. Sam's profile said she lived about an hour away in a smaller town outside Denver. We started talking, and she was charming, funny, thoughtful, asked good questions. We video chatted a few times, and everything seemed legitimate. We talked for 2 months before meeting in person. Sam said she was nervous about COVID and wanted to be careful. I understood and appreciated that she was taking it seriously. We finally agreed to meet for a walk in a park halfway between us. It felt safe, outdoors, easy to maintain distance if needed. The day of the date, Sam texted saying she was running late. Car trouble. I said no problem and waited at the park entrance. 30 minutes passed, then an hour. I texted asking if everything was okay. Sam said she was still dealing with the car and might not make it. She apologized and asked if we could reschedule for the next day. I was disappointed but understood. Cars break down, things happen. We rescheduled for Sunday afternoon at the same park. Sunday came, and the same thing happened. Sam texted saying she had a family emergency and couldn't make it. I was starting to feel suspicious, but I gave her the benefit of the doubt. We'd video chatted. I'd seen her face. She was real. We rescheduled again for the following weekend. This time, Sam showed up, but something was immediately wrong. The person standing in front of me looked similar to the person I'd video chatted with, but different. Same basic features, but this person was maybe 10 years older and looked nothing like her profile photos. I was confused. Sam smiled and apologized for the confusion. She said her profile photos were a few years old and she'd been meaning to update them, but it was more than that. The voice was different too, higher pitched than I remembered from our video calls. I felt uncomfortable but tried to be polite. We started walking, and Sam kept touching my arm, laughing at everything I said, standing too close. I kept stepping away, trying to maintain distance. Then Sam mentioned that she'd actually moved to Denver recently. She'd gotten an apartment just 20 minutes from me. I was surprised because she'd told me she lived an hour away and worked remotely from her hometown. I asked when she'd moved. Sam said about a month ago, right after we'd started talking. She'd moved to Denver to be closer to me. She said it casually, like it was a romantic gesture. But we'd only been talking online for 2 months. We'd never met in person. That wasn't romantic. That was terrifying. I made an excuse about not feeling well and said I needed to go home. Sam looked disappointed and asked if we could at least exchange addresses so she could send me a get well card. I lied and said I was between apartments, staying with a friend. Sam asked which friend, like she expected me to give a name and location. I said I really had to go and walked back to my car quickly. Sam followed, still talking, asking when we could meet again. I got in my car and locked the doors. Sam knocked on the window and said she'd text me later. I drove away without responding. When I got home, I went back through our video chat history. Something had been bothering me, and I finally figured out what it was. In every video call, Sam had been in the same room with the same background, and the lighting had always been dim. I'd thought she was just in her bedroom or home office. But now, I wondered if she'd been using some kind of filter, or if the person I'd been talking to wasn't the same person I'd just met. I did a reverse image search on Sam's profile photos. The photos came up attached to a different name on Facebook, a person who lived in California and had no connection to Denver. The photos were stolen. Sam had been catfishing me with someone else's pictures. But then, who was the person I'd met at the park? I blocked Sam's number and on Bumble. Then I got a message from a different number. Why did you block me? I thought we had a connection. I moved here for you. I blocked that number too. Then another message came from another new number. You can't ignore me forever. I know where you live. That last message made my blood run cold. I'd never told Sam where I lived. I'd been careful, but she'd said she lived 20 minutes from me. What if she'd been lying about that too? What if she already knew my address? I called the police and filed a report. I showed the officer all the messages and explained about the catfishing and the meeting. He said it was concerning, but without a direct threat to my safety, he couldn't do much. He advised me to keep blocking the numbers and document everything. That night, I heard someone try my apartment door handle. I lived on the second floor, and the door was locked, but someone definitely tried to open it. I called 911 immediately. The police came and checked the area, but whoever it was had left. The officers found no signs of forced entry, but said they'd increase patrols in my neighborhood. The next morning, there was a note taped to my car. It said, "I just want to talk. Why are you being so difficult?" I took photos of the note and filed another police report. This was enough for them to take it seriously. The officer started investigating, trying to trace the phone numbers Sam had been using. I stayed with my parents for a week. I was too scared to be in my apartment alone. When I came back, I installed a security camera outside my door and a Ring doorbell. I changed my routine, parking in different spots, leaving at different times. I was constantly looking over my shoulder. Then I got an email. It was from Sam, but using a name I didn't recognize. The email said she'd been doing some research and found where I worked. She included the name of my company and my job title, information I'd never shared with her. She said she just wanted to meet for coffee at the cafe near my office. She named the specific cafe I went to every morning. That's when I realized Sam had been following me, watching my routine, learning my schedule. She knew where I lived, where I worked, where I got coffee. She'd been tracking me while pretending to live an hour away. The move to Denver wasn't sudden. She'd already been here, watching, waiting. I hired a lawyer and got a restraining order. The police finally traced one of the phone numbers to a real person. It wasn't anyone named Sam. It was a woman I'd never heard of, with a history of harassment charges in 2 other states. She'd been using fake profiles to meet people online, then stalking them in real life. The woman was arrested and charged with stalking and harassment. She pleaded guilty and got probation with a condition to stay away from me. But I found out later she'd done this to at least 5 other people, using fake photos, fake names, fake stories, meeting people online, then showing up in their lives uninvited. I moved out of Colorado entirely 6 months later, got a new job in a different state, started over. I don't use dating apps anymore, and I probably never will again. The idea of meeting someone online terrifies me now, because I learned that the person you're talking to might not be who she says she is. And by the time you find out, she might already be too close. Sometimes I still look over my shoulder, still check my locks 3 times, still wonder if someone is watching me from a distance. That fear stays with you. The knowledge that someone out there decided you were worth obsessing over, worth lying to, worth stalking, and there was nothing you did to deserve it, except be visible online. That's the real horror of online dating. You put yourself out there hoping to make a connection, and sometimes the person who connects with you is the last person you'd ever want to meet.